All right, last lesson we learned about finding the slope of lines given 2 points and also from a graph. Today we're going to write an equation of a line given information about the graph, so kind of seeing the graph, and then we're also going to write it by with 2 points, and then we will look at parallel and perpendicular lines. So slope-intercept form is what the main one is that we want to get it to. So that's y equals mx plus b. And the reason we want to put it in that is because we want a line that anyone can graph from and make the line that we're writing the equation for. And this gives me a really quick way to do it. So this is y-intercept, so that's like where I start on the y-axis. And then this is my slope, so that is what I do from there, like the directions from there, how I move. So we will use point slope form quite a bit in order to like get it into this form. So you're going to see both of those. So here's our slope-intercept form. Like I said, the m or the always represents our slope in these equations, but m is that number in front, that's my directions. B is the y-intercept, that's where I start on the y-axis. And then point slope uses a point and slope, so we have the slope here, and it's y minus the y of one of my points, m, x minus the x of my point, and then we'll put it into this form. Always we want to get it in the end to slope-intercept form. So first, if I'm given the slope in the y-intercept and I'm putting it in slope-intercept form, I'm literally just putting it into the equation. Slope going here and -3 going for b. So that'd be y equals 6x plus a -3 or minus 3, same thing. And then if I graph it, and this is why we want it in that form, is because then it's really easy for everyone to graph my graph, because that's our ultimate goal, is that you can make that line, or anyone can make that line that I've written the equation for. So this is where I start on the y-axis. Y-axis is here, and then this is my movement. If there's not a number, the top number, if there's not a number underneath, we can put a 1 under it. The top number tells me how I'm moving, how much I'm moving up or down, and the bottom number tells me how much I'm moving left or right. So since it's a positive 6 over 1, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1, and once I have 2 points, I can draw my line. And that represents any x I could plug in there, and all the x, y points that meet this requirement. So try that one, and then I would try to graph it also on your notes so that you can make sure you understand that part. So if I'm given a point and a slope, we're going to first write this one in point slope form, but we will eventually be using this to take us into slope intercept. But just to put it into point slope form, I do y minus the y of my point, so y minus 8, and this minus is part of the equation. We don't actually have to have the parentheses. And then the slope, -3/5, x minus the x. And we could simplify that as y minus 8 equals a -3/5, x plus 10. And then to graph it, since we want it in point slope, we're actually finished there. Again, we're going to eventually be going into, or in this lesson, not eventually putting that into slope-intercept form. But this then would be where I start at -10, 8. And then this would be my movement. It's a -3 over 5. So down 3 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I know these go by 2s, but I could also do down 6 over 10, which would be the same slope. So 2, 4, 6 over 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So same thing, even though that goes by 2s. And once I have 2 points again, I can make my line. So again, I would pause the video, try this one, because that would be the next level up. All right, so now we're going to use both of those. So first we need, in both our equations, we need to have the slope. And we looked at how I find slope with 2 points. So remember, slope is the change in y, how I change on the y-axis, so from 9 to 0. And so I can do 0 minus 9 over the change in x, so -2 minus 4. And again, it doesn't matter if I put the 9 first and the 4 first, but then they would just need to line up on each other. So negative 9 over negative 6, which I always want to simplify that. You can divide both of those by 3, so 3 over 2, and then 2 negatives make a positive. So there's my slope, and then I'm going to use one of my points, doesn't matter, and put it in point slope. I'm going to use 4, 9. So here's my point, and here's my slope. So y minus the y of my point 9 equals my slope 3 over 2, x minus the x of my point 4. And then we distribute out the 3 over 2. So y minus 9 equals 3 over 2x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Divided by 2 is a negative 6. We want to keep this as a fraction because that tells us our movement, remember, and it's hard to know the movement when it's as a decimal. So y equals, so I added my 9 over, 3 over 2x plus 3. So then I can graph that. So that's our slope-intercept form. So just to recap, we found our slope. We picked one of our points and put it in point-slope form. And then we just distributed out our slope and moved our y point over with this point, that number over there. And then we wrote our equation. So again, pause the video, try this one out. So that you can be making points or making sure you're doing that. Let's look at like horizontal lines. We kind of talked about in class about horizontal lines would be these lines. So notice they don't have a slope. But let's look at it if I was given the points. And this can be a big clue. Notice my y's are the same. So knowing that, think of that when we get to the end. So I find again my slope. My slope would be change in y, so negative 2 minus a negative 2 over change in x's, 0 minus 5. So I get 0 over negative 5, which equals 0. Put in my point slope form. So y minus, I'm going to use this point here, a negative 2. Again, it could be this. If you recognize that as a y-intercept, that would be really easy. But let's say we don't. X minus 5. Y plus 2 equals anything times 0 is 0. And then I want to subtract over my 2. So y equals a negative 2. Notice my y's equal to negative 2, both of them. And my equation is y equals negative 2. Vertical lines, the x's will be the same, and it'll be, so that happens every time when I have horizontal lines. It is, the y's are the same, so I get y equals negative 3. When I have vertical lines, whatever points I have, the x's will be the same, and it'll be x equals whatever the x is. And then last thing we're going to talk about, remember we talked about the slopes for parallel and perpendicular lines. So what we're going to do is, like, say I'm given an equation of a line like this, and I want to write the perpendicular line to that through this point. So I have a point and I have an equation, and remember for writing a line I need a slope and a point. So I've got the point, now I've got to figure out from this what my slope's going to be. So this is the slope of the line that they have. My slope of a perpendicular slope, so their slope is 1/5. I want a perpendicular slope, so remember we flip this and we change its sign, so it'd be 5 over 1 negative. So now I have a slope and a point, and we can do our point slope. So y minus 0 equals my slope, negative 5, x minus 2, getting used to this, hopefully, y equals negative 5 times x, negative 5x, negative 5 times 2, positive 10. So there's my line that's perpendicular to this line and goes through that point. If parallel, you would do the same thing, except for you would keep the slope. The slope would be equal. All right, I'm going to have end the video there. If you have questions, make sure you ask. Thank you.